Imagine waking up to find your country suddenly unwelcome in the United States. No warning, no explanation, just new immigration rules blocking students, workers, and families. This is the reality for several Asian countries as a bold new US policy takes shape, sparking global debates. Framed as a national security measure, critics argue it unfairly targets nations facing complex challenges. These lesser-known countries, often overlooked, are now at the heart of a global immigration discussion. These potential bans aren't just about borders, they could impact lives, students chasing dreams, families seeking reunification. With effects rippling through trade, education, and diplomacy, this story transcends immigration. The reasons for these proposed restrictions vary. Some countries face criticism for not taking back their deported nationals, others for lacking document security or violating human rights. Yet all 7 nations now under consideration share one thing in common. The clock may be ticking on their access to the American dream. So which countries are on this controversial list? And what does this mean for the millions of people who live, study, or work across these borders? In this video, we break down each one, revealing the reasons behind the potential bans, the consequences they could bring, and what's at stake if things don't change. Stay with us to the end, because the final country on the list is the most surprising of all, and what's happening there could change US immigration policy forever. Coming in at number 1 is Cambodia. Once celebrated for its rich history and cultural beauty, Cambodia now finds itself at a crossroads. The country is under scrutiny for its cooperation, or lack thereof, with American deportation processes. The core concern: when Cambodians overstay their visas or violate US laws, officials say the Cambodian government is slow or unwilling to accept them back. This resistance has created a diplomatic headache for the US. Immigration courts are struggling to process cases without clear pathways for repatriation. For Trump's team, it's not just a bureaucratic problem, it's a security issue. If a country won't take its citizens back, why should more be allowed to enter? The consequences of a US travel restriction on Cambodia could be severe. Students dreaming of attending American universities might lose their opportunity. Skilled workers could be shut out of high-demand sectors, and families might find themselves separated indefinitely. Beyond individual lives, the country's economy and global reputation could take a hit. Tourism and trade rely heavily on international goodwill, and being labeled as uncooperative in immigration matters could scare off foreign investment. The US has made it clear, stronger cooperation and reliable documentation systems are non-negotiable. Cambodia would need to revamp its deportation practices and demonstrate good faith before any visa access is restored. Will Cambodia rise to the challenge or remain in diplomatic limbo? Only time will tell, but for now the stakes are rising. Taking the number 2 spot is Laos. Laos is facing increased scrutiny not because of global headlines, but because of something much quieter and potentially more dangerous: unreliable travel documentation. US authorities claim that Laos has issued passports and IDs to individuals whose identities can't be verified. This, they argue, opens the door to potential security risks. If someone's background can't be confirmed, how can immigration officials ensure they pose no threat? For countries like the US, that uncertainty is a deal breaker. Adding to the concerns, Laos reportedly resists accepting deported citizens, which further strains its relationship with the US. Immigration facilities are filling up with individuals who cannot be sent home, complicating already stretched legal systems. The consequences of a US travel restriction on Cambodia could be severe. Students dreaming of attending American universities might lose their opportunity. Skilled workers could be shut out of high-demand sectors, and families might find themselves separated indefinitely. Beyond individual lives, the country's economy and global reputation could take a hit. Tourism and trade rely heavily on international goodwill, and being labeled as uncooperative in immigration matters could scare off foreign investment. The US has made it clear, stronger cooperation and reliable documentation systems are non-negotiable. Cambodia would need to revamp its deportation practices and demonstrate good faith before any visa access is restored. Will Cambodia rise to the challenge or remain in diplomatic limbo? Only time will tell, but for now, the stakes are rising. At number 3, we have Vietnam. Vietnam has been praised for its booming economy and youthful workforce. But beneath that success lies a growing conflict with US immigration policy. At the heart of the issue is deportation. Washington says Hanoi frequently resists taking back Vietnamese nationals who've broken US laws or overstayed visas. The problem becomes even murkier when those individuals arrived decades ago and no longer consider themselves Vietnamese. Yet, in the eyes of US authorities, if they were born in Vietnam, they should be accepted back. Trump's proposed solution? A visa freeze for most Vietnamese travelers. Students, tourists, and even professionals could find themselves locked out of America, not for what they did, but because of stalled diplomacy. This move could hurt both sides. Vietnamese Americans often maintain strong family ties. A visa freeze would sever those bonds and spark emotional turmoil. On the other side, American universities and tech firms could lose access to one of their most dynamic talent pools. Hanoi has pushed back, claiming that some of the people the US wants to deport are no longer Vietnamese citizens. But the US isn't budging. In the end, the question is whether Vietnam is willing to compromise, or whether both nations will pay the price. This isn't just about immigration, it's about identity, diplomacy, and a generation caught in the middle. Ranked number 4 is Myanmar. Myanmar's internal chaos has now spilled across borders. Since a military takeover upended the country's political landscape, the US has expressed deep concern over human rights violations, systemic oppression, and government instability. The problem, according to Trump's team, is twofold. First, in a country where protests and violence dominate daily life, how can you trust the vetting of international travelers? And second, if a government can't even protect its own people, how can it be relied upon to manage deportation cases? Reports say that Myanmar frequently drags its feet when asked to repatriate citizens who've violated US immigration rules. This lack of cooperation leaves US authorities with limited options and growing frustrations. For those affected, the consequences are crushing. Students may lose their access to education. Refugees escaping persecution might find US doors slammed shut. Families already separated could remain that way indefinitely. The potential travel ban sends a larger message to nations in crisis. If you don't cooperate, you lose access. But is that message fair to those who didn't cause the crisis? Critics argue that blanket restrictions often hurt the innocent more than the guilty. Myanmar's future hangs in the balance, both internally and on the global stage. The next move could define its relationship with the world for decades to come. Sitting at number 5 is Thailand, a country known for its vibrant tourism, delicious cuisine, and warm hospitality. But beneath this soft power image lies a haunting decision. Years ago, Thai authorities deported dozens of Uyghur refugees back to China, despite global outcry. The US condemned this move, citing a disregard for refugee rights and international law. Now, this decision is part of the Trump administration's case for restricting Thai immigration access. More than just a political rebuke, this proposed freeze could hit Thailand's economy hard. The US is one of Thailand's largest travel and education markets. Losing access means fewer tourists, fewer students, and fewer skilled workers in international exchange. Families with ties in both countries could be caught in the middle, as visa denials disrupt reunions and opportunities. The controversy raises an important question. Should one decision define a country's entire relationship with a superpower? For the US, the answer seems to be yes, at least for now. Thailand must weigh the costs of political decisions against their long-term diplomatic fallout, because once trust is broken, rebuilding it isn't easy. Landing at number 6 is Pakistan. Pakistan's inclusion in the immigration freeze conversation is less surprising, but no less controversial. The US cites security concerns, specifically the alleged harboring of extremist groups and difficulties in vetting travelers from the region. Even though Pakistan has taken steps to combat terrorism, the US argues that it's not enough. Verification processes remain weak, and deportation cooperation is sporadic at best. For Trump's team, this creates too much risk. If the ban moves forward, it could drastically reshape the lives of thousands. Pakistani students, many of whom dream of studying in the US, could lose access to those opportunities. Tech workers, healthcare professionals, and educators could be affected too. Families could find themselves trapped in immigration purgatory, unable to bring over relatives or attend important life events abroad. Even trade and diplomatic efforts could cool in the face of prolonged immigration tension. Pakistan, meanwhile, maintains that it's doing its best given internal challenges. But for the US, partial cooperation isn't good enough. The two nations must now confront a difficult question. Is this about real security threats, or is politics taking the wheel? Closing in at number 7 is Afghanistan. Afghanistan's story is one of tragedy, resilience, and now, restriction. After years of conflict and regime change, the country has found itself on the verge of being fully cut off from the US immigration system. The concerns are serious. Lack of government oversight, unreliable documentation, and an inability to manage deportations. But the consequences of a travel ban could be even more serious for innocent Afghans seeking safety or opportunity. Without access to visas, families may remain divided, students may see scholarships vanish, and professionals, doctors, engineers, translators, might find the door to opportunity permanently closed. Critics argue that punishing an entire nation for systemic failures is unfair. The people who need help the most, the ones fleeing violence and oppression, will be the ones most affected. Yet for the US, the situation poses a difficult dilemma. How do you ensure safety without shutting the door on compassion? Afghanistan now stands at a tipping point. Will it be allowed to rebuild through international support, or will it be left in isolation? If these immigration restrictions are implemented, the effects will be felt around the world. Students from Southeast Asia and South Asia will lose educational opportunities. US employers will lose access to skilled, diverse labor. Families will be torn apart by legal walls that didn't exist before. Countries on the list may see reduced remittances, slower economic growth, and even political backlash. Meanwhile, the US may lose its status as a beacon of hope and freedom for millions. This isn't just about who gets a visa, it's about what kind of world we're creating. A world where fear dictates policy, or one where cooperation and accountability build bridges. These decisions also shape future diplomacy. Countries excluded today might become rivals tomorrow. Or worse, they may turn to less democratic allies, reshaping global alliances in dangerous ways. In a globalized world, immigration is not just a domestic issue. It's a mirror of values, a measure of trust, and a test of leadership. Whether the restrictions are temporary or permanent, their legacy will be long-lasting. This story isn't just about 7 countries, it's about the global balance between security and humanity. Fear of the unknown shapes laws, and those laws affect real lives. It challenges us to think critically about who gets access and why. Should an entire nation pay for the failures of its government? Or is there a better way to build safer, smarter, and fairer immigration systems? For every student denied a visa, a dream is delayed. For every family separated, a bond is strained. For every skilled worker blocked, an economy misses out. Governments must protect their borders, but also the principles that define them: fairness, compassion, and opportunity. As you finish watching, consider this. How would you feel if your chance to study, work, or reunite with family was taken away? Let's keep asking questions, seeking understanding, and pushing for policies. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Your voice matters.